It's okay. Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church in Peoria. My name is Reverend Jennifer Innis, and it is my great joy and privilege to be the minister with this congregation of people of all ages at all stages of life. This is an intentional community, and together we strive to live into our mission of embracing freedom, loving inclusively, growing in mind, body, and spirit, and doing our part for the health and wholeness of the world. And in living that mission, we recognize the networks of relationships of which we are a part. This is the ancestral home of the Peoria people. They were here far before the first European settlers came down the Illinois River. We offer our respect and regard to the Illinois people for who they were and for who they are today. I want to thank folks for joining us in all the ways that we gather, whether in person, whether online, whether recorded after the morning event here. It is truly something to be seeking connection in this day and age. I would offer our willingness to seek connection and to keep being with each other might just save us all. So yes, this is a radical act to be joining us today. Thank you. And if you are new, if you've first time or have just been with us a few times, please help us get to know you. And we have plenty of name tags, and please stay after the service for fellowship in our fellowship hall for coffee. I think we have some cake also left from yesterday's memorial service from Trefskers, so you know you need to come and have cake. And if you are online live with us, then please stay on the Zoom and have the chance to visit with folks there as well. And now I want to invite, as we gather in for this moment, this is a great time, optimal time, to set your respective devices to worship mode. Whether that is vibrating or silent, please, that would be very helpful. And I have a couple of notes about what is going on in church life, how we are in fact living all aspects of our mission. First, next Saturday, we will have the first ever for this congregation drag story hour. Wow. That is an opportunity for folks who are from the drag community to come and share stories and have conversation and celebrating the range of expression and also being respectful and inclusive and simply getting to know, like that connect thing I mentioned earlier. And it is very much a family-friendly event. We look forward to folks from this congregation, and it's also something for the public. We really look forward to hosting that next Saturday at 11 a.m. And next Sunday, we're doing something a little bit different for the service. You might have seen that it's called A Word from Our Elders. And this is an opportunity that the children and youth will be leading most of the elements of the service. And it is, well, for the kind of the sermon time, will be in fact a conversation. Some of our longest term members of the congregation will be joining us up on the chancel and will be responding to some of the questions with some of the children and youth. So it's truly a conversation. And if you might look into the Friday email for the notice about this, because we want to not just have like the several people who will be up on the chancel, because we know there's a lot of collective wisdom out there. So if you are so moved and you've been around the congregation a while or feel like an elder, that can have a lot of different meanings for you, then offer some responses to the questions, the kind of questions we'll be asking. How did you come find the congregation? How did you kind of find the center, your moral, spiritual, emotional center in life, and how does that show up in how you keep on living, and especially with how we're doing as a congregation. We look forward to that opportunity next week. And because this is important and I want to make sure it's publicized, I'll have one more, which is in 2 Sundays. I don't know how it got to be only 2 more Sundays. We are celebrating Jan Force, the office manager who's been working with this congregation in the office, the hub of so much of congregational life for 18 years or something like that. My goodness. And she has finally said, I'm retiring. And good for her. And we're going to have a chance after service on the 29th to celebrate her a little bit and let her know how much we care and how much we miss her and how much we wish her well. So, all right. So I'm going to stop there for right now. I want to turn towards what we are beginning for this morning with the first hymn. This first hymn is it's number 188, and we're going to do a little practicing because there's an additional part to this hymn that some of you may or may not know. Now, 188 is one that's very familiar to us, for most of us who've been here. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. All right, but there is also this counterpoint that really adds this whole other meaning to the experience of this hymn. And this is what I want to give a little introduction to today and get a little practice with in this moment. So I'm going to offer the counterpoint a little bit a cappella, and then we'll go through the whole thing with Edie's wonderful music. And the counterpoint goes like this. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. All right. Now, if you could help me out here. Now, no. That was me first, and now you all. So join me in singing this for a little bit. Just the counterpoint line. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. All right, excellent. Now I'm going to just go through it once with it all together, and then we get to sing. And we'll do the counterpoint 3 times with the music, and then we'll sing the main hymn 3 parts 3 times with the music. Okay. So me first, and then we'll all sing together. Hold on a second, Edie. Hold on. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. All right, we're good. Now we can do it with music. I have faith. Please rise in body or spirit, and we will go through the whole thing together. Thank you. Please be seated. Let me invite Regina Stanley for our opening words.
Here in the sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, by Jack Mendelson. Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality all around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new.
And let me invite Becca Laughlin forward for our chalice lighting.
We light this chalice, the symbol of our faith, knowing that this morning many others across the land and around the world are doing the same. For us and for our far-flung kin, it is a light of peace, of justice, and of love. But without work, these appreciations flicker out as soon as the candle is extinguished. Let us all join together to accept the challenge of doing hard work that makes these appreciations real.
Child is not here. As we live into the fullness of our mission of embracing freedom, loving inclusively, growing in so many ways, and adding to the wholeness of the world, it shows up, this living, in so many of the gifts that we share in our volunteering, in our skills, in so many ways that we gather and simply reach out to one another. It also shows up in our financial gifts. We take up a collection every week during the service as a way to honor all of the acts of giving and to make this particular act something that is intentional and regarded and part of our spiritual practice as individuals and as a whole. And we also, in the taking up of the offering, we send some of our abundance out into the world. We practice share the plate. And half the undesignated offering will be sent out to a named recipient of any given month, and half goes to the workings of the congregation. And our recipient for this month, as chosen by the Social Action Committee, is the Lula NFP. Now, Lula is a Peoria outreach team that provides daily food, temporary shelter, clothing, sleeping bags, bus passes, blankets, and those kinds of things that are crucial for survival for folks who are living outside or on the streets or in tent encampments. And the folks that are being served have all experienced significant trauma in their lives, and most suffer from some form of mental illness. So this is taking care of the survival, but also taking care of the body and the soul as well. Lula provides assistance in navigating available resources such as housing and medical care. And Lula receives no government funding. This is simply all by private donation. And they are, in fact, also a 501c3 charitable donation. You can find them at lulapeoria.com and also on Facebook as well. So for this morning, if your offering is toward a pledge, please indicate that in the memo line of the check. Yes, we still use checks these days. Yes, paper is good. All right. Or on the offering envelope, if you are using cash, yes, we still use cash these days as well. Or you can make the donation online through the link that's now available. Again, half of the undesignated offering will go to share the plate, half goes to the ongoing work of the church. Thank you so much for all of the generous gifts. Everyone makes a difference. And the ushers will pass the plates during our music for meditation. And once the plates have gone past, it will be time for folks to come forward and light candles of care. And now the morning offering will be gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward? spirit of community in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts toward one another, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who need help and support. Those who are ill, those who are in pain, either in body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. This also is part of our circle of care for all the joys in our lives, the gratitudes, the things that are of note and add to the blessings among us. We send our care and support to Kathy Neal, whose husband has recovered from a recent health concern. Mick Neal. Didn't I say that? I'll figure it out. Mick Neal. Yes. Okay. Thank you. We send wishes and health and recovery to Phyllis Close, who's about to go under something of a surgery. We offer thanks to the caring committee and to everyone who assisted and was part of Sue Ellis's memorial yesterday. Sue was far and away the longest term member of the congregation, having signed the book, I believe, on the day that she married Bill Ellis in April in 1944. I mean, somebody tell me if there's anybody who comes close, because my goodness gracious. Hearing about her and enjoying the company of her family yesterday was a moment of love that filled the sanctuary. Also want to share the joy that yesterday this congregation hosted a COVID-19 vaccine clinic. I know some members and some of the staff, including me, got my shot. And I want to thank Peter Offit for suggesting that we host such an event. And when the weather warms up, the organizers will return and we'll have a clinic outside that will be more visible from the road. Let's see, I also want to extend wishes for happy birthday to Larry Matthews, who is turning 90, yes, 90 on January 17th, this week. All right. Yay, Larry. I also have one more joy, and that is from Phyllis Close for her next door neighbor who received a new kidney for Christmas. That's something, huh? And this neighbor is doing well and will be home next week. Please join me for a moment, knowing that there are so many joys, sorrows, milestones, names that are within us and around us. This is our circle of care that is wide enough to hold all that is among us. We are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with all the universe. And this moment is just a little touch of that. Please join me in a moment of quiet reflection, that we may pause and savor and regard all that is around us and within us. Please join me and be present for this moment. Amen, namaste, and shalom. And now I invite Jesse Lachlan forward for our story today.
For our Time for All Ages today, I have a story to share from the late, great John Lewis. As I was preparing this story, I had a lot of big feelings. It may give you some big feelings as well, and that's okay. John Lewis was a great leader in this nation who died in July of 2020. Many were sad to lose him and thankful for all he has done to bring about justice in our nation. He had lived a long, full life, asking of himself and asking of all of us to do whatever we can and a little bit more to work for justice and make sure there was more equity in our country. John Lewis grew up in a big family where he would spend time with his aunts and uncles, siblings and cousins. There were many, many children in the neighborhood, and they would gather and play together from dawn to dusk. Mr. Lewis tells of a time when he was playing outside his Aunt Senevia's house with about 14 other children when a big storm blew up. The kind of storm that made him very afraid. I'm going to tell this story now from Mr. Lewis's perspective. So when I say I really mean John. Aunt Senevia was the only adult around, and the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, and she gathered us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many of us inside. So small, but so quiet. All of the shouting and laughter that had been going on earlier had stopped. And now the wind was howling, and the house was starting to shake, and we were scared. And Aunt Senevia was scared. And then it got worse. And the house began to sway, and the wood plank flooring started to bend in places. And then a corner of the house began to lift up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. The storm was pulling the house towards the sky with us inside of it. And that was when Aunt Senevia said, we should clasp hands. Line up and hold hands, she said. And we did as we were told. She had us walk as a group to the corner of that house that was lifting up. So from the kitchen to the front of the house, we walked together. The wind was screaming outside, and the sheets of rain were beating on the roof, and we walked to that corner and we held the house down. And then we walked back in the other direction as another corner began to lift. And so it went back and forth. 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. Can you imagine what it would be like to be inside that house, afraid that it might fall apart from the destructive force of the wind and the rain from the whole storm? I am so glad that Mr. John Lewis wasn't alone and that he was there with his friends and his family. I'm so glad they figured out how to work together. When Mr. John Lewis was older and he was writing down the story of his whole astounding life, he wrote these words. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once over these many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house. The house gets rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, and the walls around us seem as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s, at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as if it might burst at its very seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed. They came together and did the best that they could, clasping hands and moving forward toward the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would subside, and the house would still stand. But we knew another storm would come, and we'd have to do it all over again. And we did. And we still do it. All of us, you and I, our children, holding hands and walking with the wind. Thank you for listening to Mr. John Lewis's story. It makes me wonder what storms you've weathered. I wonder whose hands we'll hold in the next storm. And now, if the children want to join me, we'll depart for religious education.
Our reading today is from the Reverend Dr. Rosemary Bray McNatt, one of our African-American UU elders in this faith. She says, "By no means are Unitarian Universalists perfect. Perfect, yes, but no. But no. We often fail as much as we succeed. And yet, even when we have broken our vows 1,000 times, we return to the essential work of justice and liberation for all. We do the work best when we remember what the church is and what it is not. Church is not a place to hide. It is not the place to get away from the world. It is not the place where we get to pretend that the lives we live and our particular situations are not terribly complex, often confusing, and sometimes depressing. Church is the place where we set ourselves with one another, look the world in the eye, and attempt to see clearly, and gather strength to face what we see with courage and, yes, with joy. Here ends the reading. Please rise in body or spirit for our hymn number 298, Wake Now, My Senses. Please be seated. For this Sunday, one of the most present moments before us is how this is the annual recognition of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It has become an annual practice for so many of us of remembering, reflecting, reviewing his work and his words and his message. It is the regular checking in about how we are doing. Sometimes it feels like really the checking in about how much more do we have to do, frankly, how much longer the road is. So I confess, I come to this weekend in search of some magic. No, that's not quite sufficient to say. I come to this weekend expecting magic. I come to this moment having refreshed my reading and background and consideration of justice and expecting to be, because haven't I done this enough? Haven't we done this enough? Amen. All transformed and resolved and clear, and justice is happening. Yes. That I would get it myself as an individual, and that even more so that the world would, in fact, wake up. Wake now, my senses, right? I wish for magic because I want to be relieved of the burden, of the work, of the demand on my soul and yours too. I mean, I'm not just thinking about me. I'm like, everybody. It's not just for my benefit, but I recognize how much so many of us are deeply, deeply burdened. And how much I know in conversations it is, how shall we do this work? How shall we create a more caring and more compassionate and more just society? It seems such a great task for any one set of people to do. But wishing for magic is not how justice works. It's certainly not on MLK Sunday. What would MLK's wand look like? Just thinking about that for a moment. What would that look like? Wow. But it's not how it works. So I pull myself up emotionally, spiritually, somewhat physically, prepare to greet the world that is still terribly broken and in need, and to realize how far we have to go to meet Dr. King's dream. So to that end, I could go on talking about justice for the rest of the sermon. There's plenty to say. Because this kind of Sunday is one for diving deep. But it's also for picking and choosing and editing, leaving out so much stuff because there simply isn't time to look at all of it all in one year in any one moment. I could read and reread simply the passage from Rosemary Bray McNatt again and again and again, and that could be enough, frankly, and enter into that essential work of liberation and justice for all. But this year, in keeping with our January theme of finding our center, I want to more make this about an experience of why our care and compassion and motivation and the layers of all our feelings, recognizing all of the layers of our feelings in relationship with the world. Author E.B. White commented on his daily struggle to savor or save the world. It is such a struggle. So let us start simply focus with a reflection done together. And this is a piece I am sharing with permission from the Reverend Sarah Lindsay, who is the minister with the Unitarian Society in Ridgewood, New Jersey. So join with me into a moment of reflection and meditation. And we'll share some silence afterwards, and then I'll close the sermon. I invite you to be with me in this moment. We come now together into a time of prayer and meditation. Find as comfortable a position as you can. Focus your attention on what is in front of you, the image on a screen, a spot on the wall, the stained glass, the windows. You are welcome to close your eyes if that feels safe or the better choice. Only as is possible for your body, take a deep breath through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Continue to breathe, not in a rush, but slowly, calmly, evenly. Let your body relax as it is able. You can unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, get them down from your ears. Let your body come into its own stillness, even as you breathe in and out. The world can be overwhelming in its sorrow. We mourn beloveds and lost opportunities, cry over change we do not want, and failures we think we will be judged for. Sometimes the pain feels so unbearable, our chest tightens and our muscles ache, and we don't know where to begin to find ease. The world can be overwhelming in its demands. We must do this. We should do that. People need us to be or not be a particular way. The world needs us to act or not according to unspoken rules. Sometimes the asks that are made of us are so loud. We want to run, hide, sleep, push it all away. We don't know where we begin to find peace. The world can be overwhelming in its confusion, a frequent uncertainty, a reminder of our lack of control. The present and ever-shifting landscape we can barely grasp. The future and imagined world we can't quite shape. Sometimes the shakiness makes the very ground feel unstable. We search for solid purchase and finding none feel fear. We don't know where to begin to find our center. Take a deep and slow breath. It is true that the world can be so hard. Living these human, ephemeral lives of ours is no easy thing. It matters that we acknowledge that aloud to each other regularly. Life can be sorrowful, demanding, confusing. We affirm together that pain, lack of motivation, fear are normal, reasonable human responses to the challenges of life. We honor this and we breathe. And we can also affirm other equal truths about the world we share and these lives we lead. The world can be overwhelming in its joy. Every day, babies are born. Folks learn new skills. Loving connections are made. Hearts are opened. Celebrations mark the moment of a lifetime with laughter and companionship and delight. The world can be overwhelming in its generosity. All over the world, right here in this community, friends take care of one another, meeting needs, witnessing to each other's lives with graciousness, spaciousness, and open-hearted giving. The world can be overwhelming in its clarity. There are so many truths we know without hesitation. The truth of each person's value, that honesty matters, that caring and compassionate community is stronger than any evil, that love brings us back to our center. The world can be overwhelming in its beauty. Waves crashing on the shore, throwing salty spray, fireflies dancing in the dark of evening, the morning sunrise that glows on the horizon, every bud that flowers into a unique blossom. Breathe slowly, deeply, calmly. The world can be overwhelming. And so often tears will come, heartbreak and wholeness hand in hand. And at the end of the day, as we whisper, I love yous, to companions and humans and animals, or as we respond to the calls of our neighbors, or as we make plans for what might be, we affirm that all in all, it is worth it. May we be strong enough to hold all the truths, to experience the fullness of our living, and let the tears come. May we hang on most tightly to hope and love, remembering that we are not alone on this journey, but surrounded by networks of mutuality and care. So may it be. I think the fullness of our lives is, in fact, the core of understanding justice, because we have to ask and answer the question, how shall we live in all of the complexity of which we are a part? Not hiding in church, as Rosemary Bray McNatt reminds us, although it is nice to sit here for a while, isn't it? That's okay. But we are called to be brave enough to live completely, fully, entirely, and that we would want that for everyone, and that we would work for the same for everyone, for all things and for, in fact, our earth as well. My colleague Richard Gilbert responds to E.B. White's being torn to savor or save the world. He says, I rise in the morning, torn between the desire to save the world or savor it, to serve life or to enjoy it, to savor the sweet taste of my own joy or to share the bitter cup of my neighbor, to celebrate life with exuberant step or struggle for the life of the heavy laden. What am I to do when the guilt at my bounty clouds the sky of my vision, when the glow which lights my every day illumines the hurting world around me? No wonder I'm looking for a little bit of magic to make it all okay without having to make the choice. But I am reminded by John Lewis's story of how what comes with life are indeed the storms. And you can't run from them. Our entire world is with us and around us. I think indeed that we are just simply children, scared and yet holding on, walking from one corner to the next, moving from one area to another. Realizing how fragile we are, how at risk the world is for breaking apart, and also how amazing it is when people come together and stay together again and again, even when and especially when the work is long. We get to pass the holding and the care and the passion of all the complexity of life from one to another, between adults and children, between those who come after us we will never meet, even when the work is long. And so I'm at this point where I realize, hey, look, I found the magic. It is that wonder, that fully engaged life and love as we live in sorrow, in gratitude, and in beauty. I hope this moment has done something to replenish you and us. So let us go forth, having received the blessing and maybe even a little bit of restoration, as we live into the great mission in our lives of serving and liberation and justice, knowing that all of these commitments and responding to this call that we have made is indeed big enough to be worthy of the entirety of our lives. This is good work that we have to do. Let us go forth. Amen. Please rise in body or spirit and join me for our closing hymn, number 151, I Wish I Knew How. And we're going to hear it through once before we start singing. This is the message of our faith: to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again. From the Reverend Heather Januels, based on the words of the late James Reeb, Unitarian minister who was killed during the Civil Rights Movement. May we participate in the continuous creation of a vision that inspires people to noble and courageous living. May we share actively in the adventure of trying to forge spiritual ties that will bind humankind together in peace. With these words on our lips, may we recommit to this sacred pledge. By the work of our hands, the beating of our hearts, and with acts we commit day by day, building the beloved community made real for all. Let us go forth in this commitment. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.